Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the New Yankee Workshop. Not long ago, I was interviewed by a national newspaper, and they asked me, is there anything you haven't built in the New Yankee Workshop? And I said, sure, lots of things, including a piece of upholstered furniture. Well, that article was published, and shortly thereafter, we got numerous emails from furniture manufacturers in North Carolina. They said, come on down, we'll show you how to build a piece of upholstered furniture. So today, and in the next episode, we're going to build a French cigar chair, upholstered in leather. And you'll be able to build one too. That's next, right here on the New Yankee Workshop. Well, welcome to Newton, North Carolina. This is the old courthouse. Over here, there's a Confederate cannon that has an interesting story. In the 1920s, some teenagers came down here one day and packed it up with powder and shot and actually fired it off, and it blew a hole through H&W Drug Company. They've sealed it up since that time, so they won't do that again. Now, we're here to talk about furniture. If you're sitting in a nice, comfortable armchair right now, chances are it was made in this part of North Carolina. Over 70% of all the furniture made in this country comes from right here. So today, we're going to go down the road to Lee Industries and see how it's done.
This is our final inspection area.
Well, we're with Norman Coley, and his family has been building furniture here for over 33 years. Now, what are they doing here? What are they looking for?
This is where we clip the strings, check the cushion fill, the pillow fill, deluxe the piece, make sure that it meets the customer's requirements.
So nothing goes out without that final inspection?
No.
Where are they headed?
We're shipping all over the country. This sectional piece is going to California. This sofa is heading for Dallas, Texas.
I could see that in my family room.
Isn't that nice? This slip-covered sofa is heading for New York.
I don't know about those colors.
There's different strokes for different folks. And then this is heading for Florida.
So you're shipping all over the country. And I see no two pieces that are alike, so you're building these one at a time.
We build all of these one at a time per customer request. About 15% of our overall production is done in leather, and it's a rapidly growing part of our business.
Well, I can see why. I mean, the pieces are beautiful. The sofa is great, nice and comfortable. The leather feels so rich.
These are all aniline leathers, and we manufacture about 100 different styles in leather with nail head trim, button tufted, turn legs and casters.
Now, what's the story on this piece?
That's a reproduction that we bought at a flea market. That's hand-rubbed distressing that we actually do here in the plant.
I love the look of that. And this looks very contemporary.
It's a very modern chair. We call it our George Jetson chair.
Now here's the type of chair I need for my office. But I could never build anything like this. I don't know how to sew.
Well, we may have one that will work for you. Take a look at this one.
Now, what do you call this?
This is our French cigar chair.
A cigar chair.
This is where the guys used to sit around and smoke their cigars and have their port.
Well,
a conversation piece.
It's comfortable. It's got some nice wood turnings. I don't see a single stitch.
No, there's no sewing required here. Just some turning and some brass nail and some staples.
Think you could teach me how to build one of these?
We'll certainly try.
All right.
Norm, this is our woodworking shop. This is where we put together the frames. Right here is the frame for the French cigar chair.
Okay, so I see some pieces that have been cut on the bandsaw. I can do that. There's some turnings. I got a lathe, so I can handle that. Now, you have a set of patterns for each chair for the woodworker to deal with?
Each particular frame would have its own set of patterns that would tell each woodworker how these would be milled and assembled to make the frame.
Okay. And how do you connect all the parts?
We use a double dowel construction where we would double dowel into the top of the back post, as well as using double dowel into the side rail and the front and back rail as well.
Well, I can handle all of that.
Let's go see how it's done. So Norm, this is a machine that you probably don't even have. This is a Richardson. This is an end cut and a double bore all in the same operation.
Well, I suppose when you're trying to make a lot of frames, speed is important.
Speed's very important when you build a lot of chairs every day. Well, Norm, from the parts that we saw them making on the other side, we built a back assembly and a front assembly. These parts are put together in the pneumatic clamp, which Rick and Mark can show us how it works.
Anything special about the glue?
It's a regular woodworking glue.
And they're just using regular hammers, so as long as it doesn't show, you can pound on it all you want.
As long as the wood is being covered with fabric or leather, you can pound on it all you want. But the turnings and the arms are very important to keep from bruising.
All right, now how long is it going to sit in that?
Just until they get the arms put together. You can see that we've got blocks in the jig to make sure that we've got the frame square.
So one final check.
Checking the final square, and it's good to go. They're ready to shoot the staples and assemble the arms.
So far, so good. I can do that.
I'm sure you can. Okay, they're building the arm assembly, which consists of the arm post and the top arm. The top arm will actually be upholstered. The post itself will be finished.
Now these are connected with just a few screws in the glue.
That's correct.
And a staple into the dowel.
That's correct.
So it only took about 45 seconds to put this together.
You don't need to do that?
Well, I think it's going to take me a little bit longer, that's for sure. Yeah, making sure that it's nice and level. You know what? I can do this. Thanks for the lessons, fellas. I can't thank our friends enough down there in Newton, North Carolina at Lee. They were gracious hosts, and they taught me everything I need to know to build the cigar chair. Now, even though this is not fine woodworking, it has to be strong. It's very clever how they designed it. The arm is made out of poplar, the rails are soft maple, and the turnings are a harder maple. Now, there will be a measure drawing for the cigar chair, which will have a materials list and all the parts and accessories that you're going to need to complete it, as well as a source to get them. Now, the first thing that I want to work on today will be some of these turnings. This post, as it's known, and this stump. Before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. To save some time at the lathe, I'm going to knock off the corners of the blank where the turning occurs. To do that, I've tipped the bandsaw blade to 45 degrees, installed a temporary clamp, and now I can remove that material. Okay, now with the piece mounted in the lathe, and I've done a test to make sure it's balanced, I want to make this section round. And the trickiest part is right here where I need a square cut to go in. And I find that using a skew chisel is the best tool, and I just ease my way in there hoping that I don't get any tear out. Over here I have a diagram that shows all the features of the turning, including the diameters and the height from the bottom. Just take my time. Now I'm going to switch to a roughing gouge and round the column. Now that it's round, I can begin to lay it out using a steel rule and a pencil. Now it's a matter of using a parting tool and some calipers to set the various diameters. Now using a smaller gouge, I can start to create some of the finer features. Now here I'm using a scraper to just make a little taper at the very end of the piece. And that has to be just right because it has to accept this little caster. And that's good. So now I'll remount it and do the final sanding. Okay, there's a post. Here's the one that I made yesterday, so we have two of those. Here's a stump that I made yesterday and a blank that was paired the same way as the post. Let's turn that. Okay, there's another stump. Now I want to remove the material where it laps over the side rail at the bandsaw. Now the instructions call for me to remove 1/4 inch all the way around of the square portion on the post. Now you'll notice that the front post is going to be covered by the leather in the final product. These surfaces don't have to be smooth, but it is important to knock off this corner to eliminate the sharp edge. Now we're going to go from the lathe to some of the other pieces. And the first piece I want to work on is this lower back post. It's the hard maple. It's going to be stained. You're going to see it in the finished product. I have a template, and these templates will be included as part of the plan. I'm just going to lay it out, and then we'll rough it at the bandsaw. Okay, now that's nice and smooth. Now let's take another look at the prototype. On that leg, there is a little groove, and that has to do with the upholstery, which we'll see in the next episode. To make that groove, I've put a little extension on my miter gauge. This surface will rest against it, and it's 5 degrees to the surface, so I can just pass it through and nibble away the material. That takes care of one side. Now I'm going to swing the miter gauge 5 degrees on the other side of 90 and do the opposing face. But a little nibbling at the bandsaw takes care of the groove at the back of the post. Well, that takes care of that post. The next piece I want to make is this upper back post. Once again, I have a template, just a matter of laying it out and cutting it on the bandsaw. Well, that takes care of the top rail, which connects the posts. The next thing I want to do is cut out the arm, which comes from a huge chunk of poplar. Next, I want to work on these side rails. They have a slight curve, and because the chair tips back, they have to be cut at an angle. The angle on the side at the front here is a 5-degree bevel. The angle at the back here is a 1-degree bevel. But in addition to that, the chair is narrower at the back than it is at the front. So both ends need a 6.5-degree cut. This is a compound cut. I've laid out the piece, and I want to make those cuts before I cut the curves. The back of the arm also needs that 6.5-degree cut. I'll freehand it through the bandsaw. Now the underside of these arms gets stained because you'll see it in the finished product. So I want to make sure that's nice and smooth, and that's what I'm doing here. The The next step is to round over the top edge of the armrest as well as the top rail. That'll allow us to bend the fabric around. For that, I'm using a 1/2-inch radius router bit. At the front edge of each arm, there's a hole which receives the tenon from the stump. The next thing to do is drill through holes for the dowels that will connect the pieces together. Here I've set up to drill a couple counter bores and then a through hole for screws which will attach the back post to the lower leg. Now I've installed a 3/16" bit for the through hole. While I have the 3/16" bit in the drill press, I'm drilling a couple through holes for screws in the side rail which will attach the stump. There's a dowel that joins this upper back post to the arm. I want to drill a hole in the post. So I took a piece of scrap wood, drilled a 7/16" hole just to act as a guide. The next thing I want to do is drill a hole in the arm that meets that hole I drilled in the back support. Now in the factory they had that fancy machine that would cut the angle and drill the dowel perpendicular to the cut very quickly. But a standard dowel jig really is meant to center the hole on the thickness of a piece of stock that's square. So I found the best way to compensate for all these angles was to make wedges and just put a little dab of hot glue on the jig and stick them in place so they wouldn't move around as I set the jig on the end. Now let's see how we did. That's pretty good. Now I can drill it out. The next thing I want to do is drill holes for the dowels that will connect this side rail to the lower back post. There are two dowels 1.5 inches apart, but they're set towards the outside of the lower post. To compensate for the offset, all I need is a shim 1/8 of an inch thick. That'll locate the hole. Now the side rails have their ends cut at 6.5 degrees. So a couple 6.5 degree wedges will align the hole for the dowel. The rest of the holes for the dowels and all the cross pieces can be drilled with the doweling jig in its normal mode. Before I leave tonight, I want to drill the remaining holes in that front post. And I've shimmed it up on a piece of plywood to compensate for that material I removed. Otherwise, the holes would be at an angle. Well, good morning. Last night I finished drilling those holes, and today I'm beginning with some assembly. And I'm putting glue on these 7/16" dowels and installing them in all the rail ends. I want to make sure I get good coverage, so I have glue in the hole and on the dowel. And these spirals that you see will really help distribute the glue evenly. We want a strong joint. And now I'm going to glue the upper back post to the lower back post. Slather on some glue on all the meeting surfaces. And these will get held together with a couple screws until the glue cures. I noticed down there that they were only using 1.5 inch screws. They really want the glue to do the job. Well, now I'm ready to build a sub-assembly. I'm going to join those two posts that I just made with some cross rails. I slathered plenty of glue on all the joints. I'll tap it together, and since I don't have a pneumatic clamp like they had at the factory, we'll use our bar clamps to pull it all together. I noticed that at the factory they also gunned in some staples at each joint. I guess that's so they wouldn't have the clamp tied up. So we'll do the same, sort of belt and suspenders, I guess. I'm just towing it in at a bit of an angle. Now another sub-assembly, the front rail and the front post. Now here's one of the side rails, and it'll join those two sub-assemblies together, just like we saw them do it in the factory. All right, now the front assembly, we'll tap that on and clamp it up. Now I'm just dry fitting the arm and that stump, make sure it's going to line up properly. And now I can mark to cut off the excess material at the bandsaw. Now the stump goes into that through hole in the arm. Okay, now I can secure the stump with some screws. Now I don't know why this stump does not fit the side rail tightly, but that's the way they built them there, so we're doing the same. Now a couple more staples, one here at the back of the arm, and a couple into the dowel of the stump. There are several corner blocks that help stiffen the chair. The ones at the front are notched out to fit around the post. We'll cut those at the bandsaw. The angles are not 45 degrees because the chair tapers towards the back. Those angles are given in the plan. And now some more glue, and I'll attach them with staples initially and then add a couple screws. Now they didn't leave much meat right here in this corner block, but that's plenty strong enough for this chair. And we'll further secure it with these 1.5-inch screws. The last bit of wood are these little braces that stiffen the back. Well, now's the time to stain any of the bits of wood that will be exposed, such as this front post, the back post, the underside of the arm, and the stump. Now I'm using a water-based stain that will complement the leather that we've picked out. Once this is dry, a couple coats of polyurethane will protect it. Well, that takes care of the easy part of this project, the woodworking. We know how to do that. Now, before I left Newton, North Carolina, I got into the upholstery shop and they showed me every step necessary to upholster this chair, from putting in springs and batting to actually applying the leather. Now over here, they sent up a hide and all the other accessories we're going to need. The only thing is, I have to remember all the steps that they showed me. I hope I did.
Norm, this is where we store all of our leathers. We will inventory about 2,000 hides at any given time in about 40 different patterns.
It smells just like a shoe store, and whenever I see leather, I just want to go over and touch it. Where does it all come from?
From all over the world. This particular hide comes from Argentina, and each sector of the world generates different types of hides.
So what are you looking for here?
We're looking for natural scars, defects, holes, even brands. As you can see, this has a beautiful brand on it.
Oh yeah, you can see the outline of it here. So you're going to cut around those?
We'll cut around all these defects and only put the pure part of the hide actually in the furniture itself.
All right, where do you do the cutting?
Right next door. You can take a look. Norm, this is where we actually mark the hides and cut the hides. You can see here that Kim is actually laying the pattern pieces onto the hide and tracing around those.
And I see these marks look like defects, so she's just trying to avoid that?
Those will be areas that she'll cut around, and all of that will actually go in the trash. Let's look at how we actually cut the leather.
Wow, that looks like it goes pretty quickly.
It's a very high-speed pizza wheel cutter.
You think I could have a look at that tool? Oh, look at that. It's just a little wheel, sort of like a can opener wheel. And a grinder to sharpen it when you need it?
Whenever you need it.
That's great. Thanks.
Now when these parts are cut out, then we're ready to take it over to upholstery and actually assemble it on a frame.
Let's see it.
All right, Norm, this is our spring up operation. And this is a process that we actually pull the back springs and clamp the clips down.
Okay, so that's going to give it the support.
Yep. Now this is where we actually put the seat springs in. This is a much heavier gauge wire than was in the back. Those will be stretched from front to back just like the backs, and then those will be clinched down as well.
Now what's this wire all about?
That keeps the springs from rolling from side to side, and it ties them all together.
What's he doing here?
This is the woven material that we put over the springs, and this basically gives you a nice padding material to be able to upholster off of. This is the edge rope we put on, Norm. What this does, this knocks off the edge from a sharp corner and allows us to put the foam across that and adhere it to the frame.
That's it?
That's it. You think you can handle that?
I think I got most of it. Thanks, Cecil.
Well, Norm, this is the upholstery process, and this is where we start by putting a polyurethane foam over the arms, fastening that with a 1/2-inch staple. Okay, and then we'll take and put a layer of batting material over the poly.
Now it feels like cotton and it looks like cotton. Is it cotton?
It's all synthetic, man-made material.
And what does that do for you?
It just gives a nice, luxurious feel to the arm. Gene is putting in a polyurethane foam for the seat. We use a lot of this synthetic batting material in the product, which gives it really that soft, luxurious feel.
Yeah, I can see you're covering everything with it.
All right, Norm, this is where we actually apply the leather to the foam.
This is the tricky part. I gotta pay real close attention to this.
It is, and Gene will go through and tack it a number of times along the base until he gets it positioned exactly where he wants to. Because after you cut it once, there's no cutting it twice. As he base tacks it, he'll get the feel for where the leather needs to be over the poly and the batting, and sometimes come back and pull those staples out and reposition if necessary.
Oh, so this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning.
So this is a particularly fussy bit to do to get around that post. It looks like he's using a staple puller to pry and pull and tug. I guess you don't want any wrinkles behind the post.
It's got to be nice and smooth. That's the art of good upholstery.
Well, I must say, this is really starting to come along nicely. You mind if I hang around for a couple hours and watch this all come together?
Sure, Norm. As long as you're out by 4, that's quitting time.
Okay. Well, here it is, my first upholstered chair. Now, it took an entire day to do all the upholstery. There's a lot to it. But I gotta tell you, this is a great looking chair and it is very comfortable. So if you'd like to build your own cigar chair, a measure drawing is available with a materials list as well as a source for all the upholstery parts. Now over here is the frame that I built last week, and today we're going to cover it. The first thing I want to do is lay out and cut the leather. This is an entire cowhide, one whole cow. And what I did is took these templates, which were sent to me by the factory, and we'll have scaled versions of these on our plan, and laid them out. And really all I'm trying to do is find the best sections of the leather, avoid any defects like this or holes. To mark it, I simply use this China marker. It's very easy to use, and you can get these at a photo store. Now that it's laid out, it's just a matter of cutting it, and for that, all I need is a sharp pair of scissors. Now I'm ready to do what's called spring up, and we saw some of that in the factory. I've laid out the location for these little clips that go along with these springs. They're part of a system for the chair. Now at the factory, they gun these in with a stapler, but here we're going to nail them by hand. Well, now I'm ready to pop in the springs. Hook in the clip, pull them down, and snap them in. Now I just clinch those clips so that the springs can't pop out. Now the idea is to get all 4 springs to act as a unit. So I've tied a piece of twine to the first location, the second, and all it really is just a simple overhand knot. I don't want to pull the springs together, I just want to create something that'll give a little tension, like that, and just go until they're all connected. Now for a piece of fabric that goes over those springs. This is a spun bonded material made for the upholstery industry, and it's a separator between the springs and the foam that's going to go in here. I'm going to attach it with some staples, but before I use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now one thing's for sure, we're not going to be stingy with the staples. Now for the seat clips. Now they're a little bit different, they wrap over the front, and that's because the seat springs are a lot stiffer. All right, now these springs take a little extra effort. They got quite a bit of tension. Once again, I'm using this twine to unify these springs. I want to tip the frame up on the side and staple these along the edge. And as before, I'm going to cover the springs with some more of that fabric. Now for the edge rope, as it's called. I staple it both on the outside and on the inside. Now it may seem counterintuitive, but the first part of the chair I want to upholster are the arms. I don't want to have to drive these tacks after the back and the seat have been installed. So I start with a piece of this urethane foam, it's about 1 inch thick, and I just center it over the arm, roll it down over the front, so it's about a 1/2 inch up from this bottom edge, and put a tack in it. Now I can push it down on the arm up to the top area here, roll it over the edge, and again, holding it about a 1/2 inch up, staple it all the way along. Next, I want a piece of this synthetic batting, and I just take that over to the arm, rest it on there loosely, and bring it down even with the foam. If there's too much, I can just tear off the excess. Well, now we're ready for some leather. The leather wraps over the arm, it's tucked under, and then stapled and tacked. The function of the tacks is to cover the staples. So I have to be careful when I staple and remain right along the center line. Now I just lay the leather on, start back here, roll it under, and bring it even or just slightly below the bottom of the arm, and then tack it in place. Now I come to the inside, roll it over, and the first tack is going to go right in the middle. Then I'll work in each direction, smoothing it out as I go. Now occasionally, I'm going to have to pull a staple and reset it with this little staple puller. That's not unusual, that's part of upholstery. Now here you'll note that I pulled the leather through on the arm on one side, and on the other side, after making a cut, I wrapped it up and just stapled it, leaving just a slight bump right here. You'll notice there are no sewn seams on this piece. That's because I don't sew. So every place there's a corner, we have to tuck it and make a pleat. That takes time. I have to pull and tug on it, tack it in place, sometimes pull it apart. Wish me luck. Want to get this right, I'm going to be touching this every time I sit in this chair. Okay, now I can just snip off the excess with my scissors. And now for the brass tacks. What else? Drive it in so that it's just about a 1/16 of an inch up from the bottom of the chair, and just one next to the other, all the way along the inside of the arm. Now they tell me that at the factory, a good upholsterer can do 4 or 5 of these a day. It's going to take me a while to get to that speed. One more arm to go. Well, that turned out pretty well. Now we got ourselves 2 arms. The next part is the seat, and I've taken some batting and doubled it up, and I'm going to line it up with the bottom edge of the sides of the frame and just staple it on. And now this thick piece of foam, which is notched to fit around these turnings. Okay, and now some batting on top of the foam. Now here's my seat leather, and you can see right here there's a little notch, and that's the center of the front edge. And I want to bring that down, line it up with the center mark on the frame, and tack it. All right, with it pushed towards the back, I have to make a cut on each edge so I can tuck it under the back of the chair. Now you can see how that allows me to push it through. Then I'll come around to that side, pull it, and tack it. Okay, now there's another notch here, which is the center, and I just want to tack it along this rail. Now I'm going to pop out the staples that I put in the front so that I can get to that poly. Now the idea is to take the bottom edge of the foam and roll it under, bring the leather back over it, and attach it. Okay. Now the next cut is one of the more critical ones in this chair. You can see this line, which when it's folded over, lines up with the post. Now I don't want to cut right to the post. I'm going to cut a couple inches short, pull it down, and see how it looks. It's a lot easier to make an extra cut than to replace the whole seat. I think it's time to put a couple temporary tacks in. Now again, if I have to remove staples again and redo it, I will. Well, I think I've got that area around those posts taken care of. The next detail is at this front corner, sort of a double pleat that starts out wide and tapers down to the bottom. So what I want to do is take this excess material here and pull it down right on the corner and tack it underneath to start. Then I can start to manipulate these pieces to get that nice seam. Well, now I want to make a cut at the back here so that I can begin to stretch the leather around to complete the area near the back leg. Now I just take a sharp mat knife and carefully trim this off at the top of the leg. All right, that takes care of this side. Now I'll repeat the process on this side. Now for the back. A little bit of batting along this top rail to just pad it out, and a couple tacks to hold it in. And then I'm ready to take another piece of the urethane foam, slip it around the arm, and then we'll staple that on. All right, some more batting to cover the foam. All right, ready for another piece of leather. Bring it up over the top here and tack it. Again, I'm right on that center mark. Okay, now I'm just trying to get a feel for that back rail so I can cut the leather just inside of it before I pull it through. And now we'll center this and secure it. Okay. Now this cut is so that I can fit it around the arm. Now this is trial, error, and plenty of patience. Now there's a lot going on down here. I got the bottom edge of this back meeting the seat, and I want to get a nice joint right here. So again, it's sort of clipping and nipping and pulling. Okay, now we got to try to do something with this corner. So bring one fold down here. Okay, that's getting there. Takes a while. Now down here, I'm just going to roll this back and staple it into the rail. Let's take another look at the prototype. The next thing to work on is this welt right here, this little bead. Makes a transition between the in-back and the out-back. It's actually just a piece of leather wrapped around welt cord. Now there's a little center mark on this strip. I'm going to start right in the center of the back, right here, and just staple it on all the way around. Now here's another piece of man-made fabric. It will help support the back and the batting. Now I'm going to take the leather, which is called the outback, the back of the chair, set it over the welt, take this cardboard strip, set that down, and make sure that it's tight against the welt, and then staple it in place. Now here I'm just going to make a little snip in this corner, and then take this metal strip, which is sort of like the tackless that holds carpet in place. And it's going to help hold the outback on. I want to set it up and staple it in place. Now I've bent them over slightly. The next thing to do is put on a piece of this foam tape, and I want to let it come over the edge here just a little bit so that it won't cut the leather when we install it. Now some more batting, and that just gets laid in and trimmed up. Now I can bring it up and base tack it up at this end. Now I tuck it in with this ice pick that has had the tip ground off, and I want to clip off the excess material. And then take this mallet and just pound it down. And then I'll tuck a little more, trim it, pound it down until we get all the way up the edge. Now I'm going to tack it right here into that back leg, trim it, now here I'm using some more of that welt cord wrapped in a piece of leather, and that helps treat the bottom edge of the seat. Now once again I'm using some of this cardboard strip to secure the welt. Now another piece of that spun bonded fabric to finish off the bottom of the chair. Now for the casters. Now it may seem a little odd that we're putting these casters on a chair, but apparently we've been told that it just makes it easier to clean under it, easier to move it out of the way. On the back legs, just a glide. Okay, all the brass tacks are installed, and now we have 2 cigar chairs. This was a great project and a lot of fun to build. I hope that some of you will build one for yourself. If I can do it, you can do it. Now let me show you what we're going to build next time. It's called a glass display cupboard. Beveled glass panels in the upper section with a couple adjustable shelves. Down below, a closed storage area with more shelves. The whole piece is finished off in a high gloss white paint. It's perfect for the bathroom. We found the inspiration from a piece we discovered in a new house in Atlanta, Georgia. We'll build one next time, right here in the New Yankee Workshop.